right, Nadia, welcome. Good to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Good evening from
Thank-
London.
yeah, thank you for taking time. I'm excited. And it's great because this is going to be helpful for a lot of people, I'm sure. People who have not, had access to somebody like you who's got legitimate gifts and skills. So I'm very excited to interview you and have just hear what you have to say. So let's start out with, how would you describe what you do?
Okay, so firstly, thank you for inviting me. And yes, I've been really looking forward to this as well. So always a pleasure. So how would I describe what I do? I am I'm kind of like the middleman, if that makes sense. If you think of a radio and an antenna, right? So it picks up a signal and then it broadcasts it. That's pretty much what I do. So I'm in the middle, and I will get information, I get messages, and then I can pass that on to the other person. So I would pretty much say I'm like the middleman.
Okay, good. I like that analogy. Yeah, as a radio, that's good because there's always that tuning in aspect. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
When did you first recognize you had a gift?
God, do you know, I was I was really young. The funny thing is I didn't actually realize I had the ability until I was older. So I had a lot of weird things happen when I was little, which were when you're that young and you don't really understand it, it's quite scary. Um, and it wasn't until I started to get a bit older that I realized that the things I were experiencing was not what everyone else was. So like I would have dreams which would then happen or come true, or I would see things that other people didn't see. I knew stuff, and like other people around me hadn't taught it to me before. So it was kind of, I got a lot of that when I was younger. And give you an example actually. So I was always a I was always a bit of a weird kid, to be honest with you. I haven't changed much as an adult, as you can probably tell. Um, But from a young age, I used to get a lot of things come to me, or I used to dream things or see things, and then it would happen. And if I mentioned it, say to my mom or to other people, they didn't get that. They never had that. So I always felt a bit different, if that makes sense. But I
Hmm.
didn't realize what it was until I was that much older that I could understand it properly. So as a child, I remember once I'd had a dream, and I'd been at this party. It was a kid's birthday party. There was a clown there, and I remember we were sitting outside in the garden. There was a group of us, and he's got like long, like yellow trousers on with these little red patches, and there was bunnies hopping around the garden. And I remember we were sitting outside, and he was showing us like magic tricks, and then all of a sudden it started pissing down with rain. And I remember that, and I woke up and I was like, "That's really weird." And a couple of weeks later, my next door neighbor had a birthday party, and they had like a performer there and everything for the kids. The guy who came was the same clown from the dream, with the same
Wow.
trousers and the same patches. And he'd come with like, he was doing little tricks and stuff, and we were all in the garden, and it was a really nice day. So I remembered that part. We were sitting outside in the garden, and there was these two bunny rabbits that my neighbor had been given as a birthday present. So one was black and white, and the other one was white, which was the same as the one that I saw in the dream. So we were outside. He was doing all of his tricks. Bunnies were hopping around the garden, and then it became really cloudy, and then it started pissing down with rain. And
Amazing.
so I
Big dream. Wow.
and so I was really young then. I was about what, five, I'd say, five, six, something like that. So I didn't understand it then, but I used to get a lot of experiences like that, or I just knew stuff, or I'd see things and I'd tell somebody else and they'd be like, "There's nothing there." So I wasn't really aware of it properly until I was like that much older. So like I would then get certain things come to me, or I'd know something, see something, and then it happened, or I'd get messages for somebody and I'd give them the message and it was correct. So I'd get a lot of things like that.
Interesting. So
Does
did
that
you
make sense?
figure out on your own? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I did and I didn't. So I had all of that, and then when I was, I would have been about 8 years old. My best friend at the time, his mum was a psychic, and she gave me a set of tarot cards. And she said, "Oh, when you're older, you're going to be a psychic." And I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to be a vet." And then obviously realized I had to study science, so that kind of went out the window. Um, and so she gave me these cards, and she always told me that I had the ability. And I used to realize like I'd speak to her about things and she'd tell me stuff, and I was like, oh, she understands it. So I had that kind of feeling. You can sense when somebody else has that ability. You can see it or you can sense it. And I was that much younger, I was like, oh, she's not looking at me like I'm mad. So she gave me these cards and I started playing around with them. And obviously then I started getting more confident with it. So she was the first one to tell me that. And then obviously you start putting two and two together, and then you start developing your skill set more. You start understanding things. Messages come in a lot clearer. So then it wouldn't be just random bits of things in a dream, or you would actually get proper messages.
Yeah, interesting.
Does that,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Did you want to add something to that?
I was going to say, does that answer
Yeah,
your
no, that's
question?
great. That's really good. When and how did you meet your guides? Because I know you've mentioned on occasion that you have guides.
So my guides actually, I've got three. Guides do actually come in and out, funnily enough. So they'll come to you, and each one will come in, teach you something different, and then some of them will stay around. Most of them will come in, teach you that, and then go. So I've got three guides. The first one, she's been with me ever since I was little. And again, I hope my mom's not listening to this because she's going to get quite upset with this story. Um, so I was about 5, 6 years old, I'd say. I was very young. And I used to have dreams of this woman with really, really long hair. And she used to live in a cave. And she used to come to me in dreams, and she kept telling me she was my mom. So I'd wake up, I'd be like, okay, that's really weird. And I told my mom this. My mom was like, no, no, definitely not your mother. I'm your mother. And I'd have a lot of these dreams, and she'd come to me and she'd give me messages. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older. Obviously, I kind of stopped saying this to my mom because it really upset her. Um, I ended up, when I started to meditate as I got older, I started getting more messages coming in from her as well. So she came in a lot, and I could then hear her as well. So she would come in and she would give me messages. But she was more, I'd say she protected me more. So she would come in to look after me, to make sure that, if anything was going on, it was almost like you can't read for yourself, for example. So very rarely I would get anything for me. And usually it was to protect me from something. So a really stupid example, years ago, I was going to go out with my friends. We used to go out every weekend. And on this particular weekend, I'd been feeling really not right. And I just kept getting this horrible feeling of we shouldn't go out because something bad was going to happen. And all I kept seeing, and she was the one giving me this, I just kept seeing bits of broken glass flying. And I couldn't understand why. It was dark, and I just kept seeing bits of broken glass flying everywhere. And then there was like stools that had been wooden stools knocked over into tables. Couldn't understand what it was, but I had the most horrible feeling. And she just kept going on, don't go out, don't go out, don't go out. So I called my friends who all know that I do this, and I was like, listen, keep getting this horrible feeling. I've had it, couldn't shake it. I think we need to not go out. A few of them were like, whatever, they wanted to go out, so they took no notice. I didn't go out. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call to say that where I used to live, without naming names, there are two rival families that don't get on very well. And they'd had a fight with the doorman, and one of them drove his car through the front of the bar, which was all glass. So what I was seeing was the bits of broken glass that had gone flying from when he drove the car through. And obviously the tables and the stools. The worst part was that was actually the area we always used to sit in as well.
Wow.
So
Were
she
your
comes in
friends
a
there
lot.
at the time? Oh, I'm sorry.
They were, oh no, it's okay. The three that went, they were there, but luckily they were actually at the bar ordering a drink, because otherwise they would have been hit by the car.
Wow,
So
that's scary.
she comes in a lot for that. But as I said, ever since I was little, she used to come to me in dreams, and then sort of meditations and things like that. And she'll come in if I'm dealing with any type of really heavy energy or something that's going on. She will often step in as more of a protector. The second one, he came to me when I started meditating. So as my spirituality developed, as I got older, started meditating more, and he appeared. And he's lovely, but he's really grumpy. Um, so he's kind of, yeah, I have a lot of respect for him. He will give me information, but he just reminds me of kind of like the strict. I had a really strict geography teacher. He kind of reminds me of him.
Interesting.
So he's someone that I can ask him a question, he'll give me an answer, but he doesn't really have much of a sense of humor. And he just comes across as very stern. So I avoid asking him too many questions, because I know that it will probably annoy him. So he's just very, he'll give me guidance, he'll answer things. He's not as detailed. He's just very kind of yes, no, or don't do this, or you should do that. So he's a bit more to the point. He's a little bit sort of blunt. And he came forwards from when I was doing meditations. I was suddenly aware of someone being there. And he then introduced himself. So I have him there as well, and he's great. And now and again, I'll ask him. I should probably mention, I'm going to go to my third guide in a minute. I should probably mention they don't all get on between themselves. Um,
So much
which
for love on
actually,
the spiritual plane.
sorry.
So much for love on the spiritual plane.
Yeah, it's the way that I have been led to understand this is that my third guide, who I'm going to tell you about now, he irritates the first two. He's lovely, but because he's naughty and can be quite childish, they don't really have the patience for it. So there's times I had to laugh once because I was doing a reading, and my guide, the third one, I call him Fred. I shall tell you about that in a minute. He was giving me sort of guidance, giving me information, and all of a sudden he went, I'm gonna fuck off now. It's like, why? Yeah, you've got some other help coming in, so I'm gonna go. Bye. And kind of disappeared off. And I was like, okay, that's really odd. And my other two guides then stepped in to give me some other information, because what I was with that particular reading, the person I was reading for was going through some really heavy situations, and the other two were probably a bit more experienced to deal with that. And because he irritates them, he decided to make himself scarce so he didn't get shouted at or sat on the spiritual naughty step. So he's, yeah, he appeared around 10 years ago, and I was in the middle of doing a reading, and I still remember this, and I was given the information, and all of a sudden I just started getting a hell of a lot of like swear words, and I was like, okay, I swear a lot, but he swears a lot more than me. And I kind of sat and I was like, what the hell is this? And he just carried on. I'm like, well, who are you? Who are you, and where have you come from, and what are you doing here? Because I'm trying to give a reading and you're coming in. And the response I got was, I'm your new guide, bitch. It's like, okay, right? I was not expecting that. So yeah. He's
He knows how
at
to
the
make
three.
friends.
Yes, yeah, he's at the three, he's the most lively. He's lovely, but he's very naughty. So yeah, he loves to swear. He's lovely. He refuses point blank to give me his name and has done for a very, very long time. So every time I'd ask him, like, no, I'm not telling you, I'm not giving it to you. And he's got a bit of an attitude as well. So I've nicknamed him Fred, and he's very upset about that. So I don't know if you've seen the film Drop Dead Fred.
A long time ago.
Right. So I'd been going on and on at him, and I'm like, listen, you've been around. At that point, he'd been around, I think, about 5, 6 years. I'm like, listen, this is a long time to have somebody around who doesn't show himself to me and doesn't give his name. So, you know, no, not giving it to you. I don't need to, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, fine. And I'd come home from work, I'd sat down, I'd put the TV on, I think it was on Netflix, and Drop Dead Fred was on. And I started watching, I was like, oh my God, it's you. When I say angry, he's like, the fuck? That's not me. Fuck off. I've got a best fashion sense. I don't fucking dress like that. How dare you? I'm not that annoying. Fuck you. He was really angry. Yeah, I had 3 days of peace and quiet. 3 days. So since then, I've gone, if you don't tell me your name, you're going to be stuck with Fred. So that's literally what his nickname is. So I nicknamed him Fred. And he's he's naughty. He's very good. He's far more detailed, I'd say, out of the three of them. So he gives more detail. But there's times as well where he's highly inappropriate. So if I'm trying to be serious, he will come in and just some of the stuff he comes out with, and I think you've experienced that as well. And I
Yeah.
just and they're like, dude, really?
I love
Stop.
Brooke. Yeah. Yeah, for the record, yeah, because you and I have had a number of readings together, and he makes me laugh sometimes within 30 seconds of my arrival in the so it's great. Okay, so I have to because at this point I'm sure there's people watching who are thinking to themselves, wait a minute, when they think about the spiritual realm, they think about, they visualize harps and halos and angels and endless prayers, not necessarily a litany of profanity. How would you explain Fred to them?
Okay, so just as you have on this planet, and as you have with human beings, we have all different types. We've got good people, bad people, people kind of in the middle. You have with spirits as well, and you have on the spiritual plane. So they're not all love and light. Some of them have a temperament. It's as a really good friend of mine said to me once, and I like his. I'm going to quote him on this. He said, "You can't have. There has to be a balance in the universe. You can't have too much of one thing or too much of the other. If you have too much light, the whole planet would get scorched and it would wither and die. If you have too much darkness, then nothing would grow."
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you have to have this kind of balance. And Fred he's very good, but he has a naughty side to him. And from the way I've understood it, because I asked him on a couple of occasions, I'm like, so how come you're my guide? Like, all guides come in, as I said to you before, to teach you something. He's just stuck around me. And apparently, where he has a rather naughty sense of humor that some people don't appreciate. And he upsets certain people with his sense of humor. So he's decided that he wants to redeem himself, and his way of redeeming himself is guiding people and helping people. And apparently, because I have a really naughty sense of humor like he does and love profanity, he decided that it's kind of a match made in heaven. So he just kind of comes in and can be himself whilst he's redeeming himself by helping me, if that makes sense.
That's such a wonderful way of putting it. I love it. A match made in heaven for sure. Uh, that's perfect. So I've got to, okay. I want to talk about Fred for a bit because you said some interesting things. You said you'd never seen his face.
Uh-huh.
So what were you aware of, or like when he showed up, what did you see?
So he shows me images. So he'll show me, sometimes it can even be like a vision of something happening. So if you imagine like watching a movie, he'll show me things like that, or he can show me photos, he'll show me images of other people. He's never shown me his face. And when he first showed up, it's, when you read, like if you're reading a book, you've
Mm,
got like a little voice in your head that reads stuff out to you, right?
yeah.
So what you'll find is some spirits that come through, or guardian angels, however you want to call them, they have a different voice. So you can instinctively pick out the difference between the voice in your head. God, that sounds wrong. The voice in your head and them talking to you. Um, so when he came through and I was giving the reading, I just got all of this like swearing and profanity. I'm like, fuck, where's that come from? And it was him. I didn't get shown anything other than images of, so the reading that I was doing for the woman, what was going on, he was showing me that, but he didn't show me himself. So I just heard him. And as time has gone on, he's never shown me his face. I'm aware of, I don't know why, but I'm aware that he's very tall. It was just a feeling that I was given. And that was confirmed to me when I actually went to see a medium, because I can't read for myself. Most um, psychics can't. We just, because we can't be objective. We're too involved. So either we see what we want to see or we see what we don't. So I have to go to someone else to look at things for me. And she picked up on him. So I was aware that he's very tall. And I was also aware that he's extremely old. He didn't like that, but he's been around for a long time.
Oh,
Um,
did he say that to you? That he didn't like that?
I got middle finger.
Oh, nice. Tell myself. And thank you for showing up.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, he actually loves whenever I do readings for you or I speak to you. He's always excited because he knows that he's got an appreciative audience. So,
Very.
but yeah,
Uh,
he's very old, and he's been around a lot. So those are the things that I was aware of. Um, when I was, God, when was it? It must have been around 2014, I think. 2014, 2015, 2015 must have been, because I moved back to London 2014. It was around that time. He'd been going on and on and on at me about going to the British Museum because they had a exhibition of Mesopotamia, Samaria, Babylonia, and he'd just been going on and on and on. I was like, for God's sake, what do you want? And he'll come in, and this is like with anything. If he wants my attention, doesn't care if it's in the middle of the night. He'll quite happily wake me up to tell me somebody's boiler's about to break. There's no boundaries. And he kept going on. So okay. And I finally gave in. I went to the British Museum and we went around the Mesopotamian exhibition. And there was a few different things. So they had like cuneiform and all the different, like I think it's called cuneiform, the old style writing that they had. And then they've also got some pieces of, I believe it's pronounced Easter, but it's spelled Ishtar, Ishtar's Gate. And he was really excited and he was telling me all about it. Now, I do need to clarify here, my eyesight is absolute shit. So when I drive, I definitely need to wear glasses because otherwise I'd be running everyone over. And if, sorry, if I'm at a bit of a distance from something, I can't read very well. So I have to get really quite close up. So as we was going through, he'd spotted this particular parts of the wall, which was Easter's Gate or Ishtar's Gate. And he was explaining it to me, and then he was talking about the towers of Babylon as well. And I was quite taken aback. And the way he was talking about it, it was as if he'd been there. So
wow.
not just like, oh, this happened and that happened. He was describing it as if he'd witnessed it, as if he was around when that happened. And there was this kind of that's when I learned he's actually a bit of a softie, because I could hear this almost like a bit of melancholy in his voice while he talked about it. And then he took me to another part in the museum, and they had these old, they were like board games that were made back in, God, 20,000 BC, 20,000, 25,000 BC. And he was explaining to me how the game was played. And it wasn't until I actually got close up and I saw they'd got like the explanations there that I realized that he was right. So I was like, okay, how do you know that? He was like, yeah, yeah, no, this, and they played it this way and they did this and they did that. I was like, okay. But it wasn't like he was just, other times he'll explain stuff to me. This was like he was actually there.
That's amazing. Okay, so I have to ask, because that just makes me think about a million things. So you're looking at these artifacts and he's explaining what the uses are. And
Mm-hmm.
it strikes me that, people in the spirit world probably laugh, when they see stuff like that, because, we've got to have all kinds of stuff that people think are, oh, that's this, we believe that that was this highly spiritual, revered object. And they're probably going, no, that's probably the equivalent of a toilet seat, you know. So, you know, if a museum curator were to come to you and say, hey, what are the chances of Fred coming through and telling us, was this actually a game or is this a religious artifact? Or, would you do that?
I'd happily do that. I don't know if they would, just because I think history and science and the spiritual realm, because it's not an exact science, so to speak, they they kind of look at you like you're a bit nuts.
Yeah.
So if they came to me and asked me, hey, could you tune in, or even psychometry, for example, is another form. It's reading objects, getting, you get energy off the object and you can give information about it. I'm more than happy to do that. I'd definitely be down for doing that. I just don't know if, especially the curators here in the British Museum, would really be open to that.
Well, if I'm thinking about it from a curator perspective, I'd be ridiculously close-minded to not be open to another perspective. It doesn't mean I have to buy off on it and say, oh, we're going to change all the signs, but to get a different perspective, I think they'd love it. Anyway, I didn't mean to go off track, but that just fascinates me. Okay, one more question along those lines, though. All right, so I've heard, and I may have some of the exact details wrong, but when people who study the pyramids and stuff will say that those blocks were put together with the equivalent of like less than a human hair width, difference between them. And people say, well, how did they do that? They didn't have lasers, or we don't think they had lasers. uh, Fred, have anything you'd like to share about how some of that highly accurate uh, construction was done?
I'll ask him for you. Okay. Right. Do you want me to just come out with exactly what he said?
Yeah, I'd love it.
I'm
I
being
don't
told,
think it wants to be censored.
yeah, trying to put a little bit of a filter in there. Um, so with regards to that, I'm being told to say they actually had far more technology back then than what we've been led to believe,
Interesting.
because it's not. See, interestingly, I am being given images of kind of not like how we have modern day cranes. So, like how, when they're building skyscrapers, they have those huge, big, they are cranes, aren't they? I think they're called.
Yeah.
Um, I'm being shown an equivalent of that, but I'm also being given there's other technology and other tools that they had that we haven't been informed of, or we haven't discovered yet, if that makes sense. They had more technology then than we've been led to believe.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. Maybe
it's,
we'll do a follow-up on that. That'd be kind of a cool follow-up session if people are interested.
oh, 100%. I'd love to.
Yeah, cool. Let's do it. Okay, so I have another question about Fred. You had one of the words that you used just now to describe him was softy. What's your favorite experience that highlighted that for you?
Oh, okay. So, very long story short, I had a particularly horrible experience quite a few years ago, which I won't go into all of that. And I was really emotional, and I'd received some really, really bad news, and I'd gone off for a drive. Looking back, probably wasn't the best idea that I had. But I'd gone off for a drive anyway, and I remember I was on the motorway and I started to get really upset. And you know, when you're trying to not cry or you're trying to hold it in and you get to that point, it's like you start to get a bit hysterical. And then I was just literally sobbing. And I couldn't pull over, I couldn't stop. And I was trying to sort of stay in control because I'd got myself so worked up. Anyway, he appeared and I told all of them, okay, I was upset with everybody that day and I shouldn't have taken it out in spirit, but I was upset with them because I wanted them to help stop this from happening and they couldn't because it's not their area. But anyway, so I was very upset and Fred came in and tried to talk to me and I told him all to F off and leave me alone and just go away. And I was getting like even more worked up with all of this. And I could tell he was, I'm laughing because I'm just remembering what he said to me. And he just kind of went off and I was just cough and leave me alone. He was like, all right, I'll go. I'll leave you. I was like, yeah, good. Cough. Leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. And I'm still emotional, still crying. And then he comes back and he goes, you know, you're really ugly when you cry. As mad as that sounds, it snapped me out of crying as much. And I was like, dude, fuck off. Like, just leave me. So it snapped me out of it from getting as hysterical. And further up, there was a petrol station that I managed to pull into. So like, come off the motorway, I won't pull into the petrol station. And he was like, you're never going to get a boyfriend looking like that. I'm like, go away. Just like, leave me alone. Seriously. And I knew that he'd done it. He'd done it from a place of love, which at that precise time I didn't appreciate. And it wasn't until kind of later on he'd sort of checked in on me and he went, I was worried about you. And
Oh,
so I was like, really? He's like, yeah, I was worried about you. And that kind of brought it home to me. I'm like, that's how comes I know he's a softie. As much as he puts on this whole bravado, um, he's an absolute softie.
oh, that's great. Yeah, I just love Fred, and that's just such a perfect, use of his wonderful sense of humor to snap you out of that. That's what a gift. You're lucky. Anything else about Fred you want to share?
So I'm just trying to think, really. What else would you like to know about him?
I don't know. Well, you had mentioned one time that he has feathers. You want to talk about that?
Yes, he does. So I went, as I said to you before, I can't read for myself. So I've been to this medium and she, in the middle of the reading, she turned around, she went, oh, I've got your guide here. And I was like, oh my God. I said, I am so sorry. I'm going to apologize to you in advance. And she went, why? I said, and he's going to me, oh, that's fucking nice, isn't it? I'm really sorry. He's a character. She said, oh, no, it's fine. He's having a natter with my nana. So her nan is actually her spirit guide. She's like, oh, they get on really well. So anyway, so he refused to give his name to her as well. And she confirmed to me, she goes, he's really tall. So I said, yeah, I had a feeling. She said, yeah, he's really tall. And he's been around a long time. I'm like, yeah, I figured that one. And she said, but he's got really huge wings. I was like, Fred has wings. She's like, yes, Fred has wings. I was like, oh, okay. And she said, yes. She said they're actually. She said they're really beautiful. She said, and they're quite interesting because they change color as they go down. So I was like, right. She said, so like the top part is almost black. I went, right. She said, and then it's like grey, and it goes from like the black to sort of a grey, and then it's like bright white at the bottom. So it follows like a, and they're huge, huge wings. So I was like,
That's amazing.
Jesus. Yeah. Obviously, he doesn't have a halo, which does not surprise me. But yeah.
I've always said that most of the angels in our lives are more likely to have horns than halos anyway.
Yeah, more than likely.
And
But
I'm not
he,
in Fred. I'm not saying you have horns, by the way, just for the record.
well, it depends on the day and if I've had caffeine. If I haven't, I mean, God help anyone who comes into contact with me. But yeah, so he's lovely. He is lovely. He's naughty, but he's very the other thing with him as well, I like the fact that, as I said, with all of my guides, they kind of serve different purposes. So the first one's very protective of me. The second one is kind of your very strict teacher vibe.
Mhm.
Fred is more gives advice. He will give very in-depth information. He's completely inappropriate, as you know. He also has a bit of an attitude at times and a mind of his own. So I've had cases where, for example, he loves it when we have a reading, and there's a few other people he gets very excited. When I've come across some people that aren't always as friendly, shall we say, or have a bit of an attitude, or I get certain people are skeptics. I completely understand that. They're well within their right to be. Um, but there are some people that can just be quite defensive. And when I've had a few in the past who have been, say, a bit defensive or a bit rude, kind of gets his back up, and then he will refuse point blank to read for the person, which is, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
she's
Which
great.
is also within his right. So,
100%. But it's like, are you going to help me? No. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not reading for him. No. And he'll just go off.
so what control do you have over which of your three guides comes forward?
Honestly, none.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they usually it's Fred because he loves the limelight. Um, shouldn't say that. It's true. I don't really. I think it more depends on who I'm reading for
Mhm.
and say the information they need to know. So
Okay.
if it's somebody who's probably not going to appreciate his kind of sarcasm and his sense of humor, then it will more than likely be my second guide who comes through. If it's a very heavy stuff, or the person that I'm reading for has got a very heavy energy, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person, but sometimes people can pick up negative energy or real heavy energies from things. So she will often then come in to kind of create that barrier so I don't end up picking up on it all.
Okay.
If that
Interesting.
makes sense.
So, you had mentioned skeptics. So let's talk about that for a second. Skeptics and critics sometimes say that psychics only share, the positive information rather than, negative information or warnings or whatever. What's your thought on that?
Right. So, as I said before, skeptics have the right to not believe or believe whatever they want. I mean, even if we got the best psychic medium in the world who stands up on a platform and gives it to a whole group of new people who she's never met before or he's never met before, and gives really detailed, accurate information to them. So, for example, I don't know, I've got somebody by the name of William who passed in a car accident, this, that, the other, stuff that she could never know, and it resonated with all the people there. A skeptic would still find a way to say they don't believe it, or that it was faked, or she had an earpiece in, or there's always going to be something. So it's kind of, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So a lot of skeptics I've come across in the past they need to experience things for themselves. So they may get to a point in their life that they go, do you know what? I think maybe there's something a bit more out there, and they want to delve into it. Then completely understandable. Sometimes people go through experiences that they go, I need different answers than what I've already got. And sometimes they don't. It all depends on the individual. With regards to your question of positive only, no. So it depends on who you see. Unfortunately, in the spiritual side of things, there are scam artists, there are fakes, which just disgust me. But besides that, people who, life isn't unfortunately perfect. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. And when you work in a spiritual realm, or you channel like I do, I have to be able to give every message, because it's not, for me, I don't think it's fair. If you sit there and tell somebody everything they want to hear and it's not going to happen, one, you're doing them a disservice. Two, you're setting them up for failure. Three, when it doesn't happen, they're even more deflated, and it's nasty. You don't, it's that's not that's not the right way of doing it. Obviously, it's never nice to give negative information, but there's ways of delivering the message. So I might have a reading with somebody and be told, well, you know what, they're gonna, I don't know, they're gonna be made redundant, as example, or their contract's gonna end. Okay, that's really shit news. But it may be that that's ending for something better to come in. So there's always a way of positioning things and a way of looking at things. I genuinely believe that being honest with people is the best way of doing it, because the whole you only give positive, I that's not how I work. And most people that I know wouldn't work like that either. There are, unfortunately, as I said, some people that will, um, who give the rest of us a bad name. But
Yeah.
for me, I mean, I've had cases where I've had clients come to me and go, "Oh, I only want to hear the positive," and I'm like, "Well, then I'm not your person. Sorry, I'm not going to bullshit you, because it's not who I am. It's not fair on you, and it's not. I'm not going to do that. It's not kind of fair on my guides either."
No, certainly not. You don't want it to be the, I see travel in your future. You don't want to be that?
You're going to meet someone, really special on a day that ends in Y. You know?
Yeah. Oh
Yes.
my God. It could be any day this week. Oh, yeah, never mind. All right. Perfect. I've over my life seen a lot of different people, and it's something that was interesting to me. When I first started, finding out and being open to it. I to your point, I saw the people who had a gift and people who didn't, and hands down, just for the record, and I'm not just saying this because you and I are on the call, you are hands down, head and above anybody I've ever worked with,
Oh,
because and that includes, I mean, I've had readings with Sylvia Brown, I had a reading with her son. There nothing compares to some of the things that you and I have talked about, and the degree of accuracy and whatnot, which is just such a gift in my life.
It's all about trying